After weeks of wandering and scavenging, Scorpion and Maria encountered a ruin that changed everything. The walls alone convinced me that this place was worthy of claiming, but then, while clearing out each room, we spotted the entrance to an underground portion of the map, which I will now refer to as the bunker. If we can secure whatever is down there, this ruin might just be the sanctuary we've been looking for. But first we have to put down the pigskin. The rest of the day is spent doing preliminary camp work. As night falls, Maria descends the steps of the bunker and bears witness to the horrors therein. It's an underground parking lot and highway, which has long since caved in. It seems to have been inhabited by friendly survivors that are currently being invaded by shamblers, mechanoids, and an insect hive all at once. Or in other words, it's a massacre. On the plus side, there's an additional stairwell. This place goes even deeper than I initially thought. Anyway, enjoy the massacre. I suppose now is a good time to mention that I've modded my shamblers to be absolute nightmares. They can attack animals and transmit an infection known as Necroa that kills and reanimates its host into a shambler within about a day of infection. After narrowly escaping this shambler suited up in riot armor, Scorpion and Maria will continue to rest and do their camp work. Let's continue watching the massacre in the bunker. I did my best to get all the footage I can of the massacre in the bunker. If it's not enough, let me know. Every single person within the bunker has animated into a shambler. Luckily for us, the anomalous mechanites that animate a shambler only last for a few days. All we have to do now is survive the wait. And it is only a matter of time before the shamblers on the surface reach us. Finally, days later, the shamblers are beginning to crumble. Fuck. Thankfully, the fire goes out a while later. After the bunker cools off, I send Scorpion and Maria into the bunker to secure it. After all those infectious corpses are dragged into a corner of the bunker, we begin uncovering the layout of the rest of the parking lot structures in here itself. Thankfully, there's a generator that survived the massacre and is still functioning, though we'll turn it off for the time being. The control station next to the generator room has a shambler suited in riot gear. There's no way I can gun it down without risking infection and sheer ass beatings, so we'll back off for now and let time claim the shambler instead. In addition to armor, food, and weaponry, we come across a sniper rifle, and given that we already have a hunting rifle, it'll be nice to have two snipers, to say the least. Soon after, the shambler in the control room drops, and Maria deconstructs a barrier to the next room within the bunker, but not before a group of man-hunting bugs arrive on the surface. And sure enough, the anomaly's presence makes itself known, and a horde of shamblers arrives to vibe check our new base. It's about now that you're really going to understand the importance of the bunker. Scorpion and Maria will remain in the bunker as to not rouse any shamblers. They scavenge some more of the ruin, clean out the place, and even use this time to descend down to the next level of the stairwell. Oh, also, the paralyzed daughter of a powerful raider faction crash-landed on our territory, and I accidentally accepted her into our group when I actually meant to reject her, which is a shame because she's gonna starve out there. Anyway, let's wish Scorpion some luck as he descends to the next level of the bunker. It sounds like absolute carnage down there, though we can't see it. So I try squeezing in through the maintenance tunnel. And guess what else is in the maintenance tunnel with me? A shambler. One that manages to infect Scorpion with Necroa just moments before he could escape. Fuck. With only 19% tend quality, the Necroa archovirus stays one step ahead of Scorpion's immunity gain. And I won't lie, this made me panic at least to the point of injecting this mysterious cell injector that we scavenged into Scorpion. Maybe it'll help, maybe it'll die, I don't know. He's already dead at this point anyway. Thankfully, the cell injector actually increases Scorpion's blood filtration and healing factor. So now all he has to do is rest and achieve immunity before the infection claims him. The surface is safe, for now at least, so Maria will head up and gather as much supplies as she can. While Maria does this, Scorpion's increased blood filtration allows his immunity to finally move past the infection, so our impulsive plan worked. While Maria... Oh god. It's back. What is that fucking thing? Later that past midnight, Maria investigates an ancient logistics terminal within the bunker. This terminal seems to have access to some ancient Amazon warehouse inventory deep underground, which we can only access by trading with this terminal. And there's some pretty good stuff down there, including intel maps containing the locations of more underground bunkers like this one, which is an exciting future prospect to be certain. Unfortunately, we're broke as hell at the moment, but thankfully the logistics terminal accepts all sorts of random useless scrap that we found. After tending to himself with proper industrial medicine, I think it's safe to say Scorpion will, in fact, make a swift recovery from Necroa. He got extremely lucky this time, but I seriously doubt this kind of luck sticks around. The next morning, a death pall settles over our territory. The same infectious microscopic robots that caused Necroa have blanketed the land, causing corpses to spontaneously rise as shamblers until it wears off. I should note that the fog itself isn't infectious to the living. It's an infection that only affects corpses. Huh, I never thought about that. Anyway, yeah, pretty much all these people will die of Necroa, and the Necroan Shambler domino effect begins. For every life taken, wildlife included, the anomaly claims another rank. And when that ball starts rolling, it do not stop. Also, rather alarmingly, these traders entering our territory were carrying 10 mortar shells containing nothing but malaria, and now those tanks are just sat outside waiting to catch a stray bullet. While the carnage outside persists, I use this chance to try and scrape together the silver needed to buy some antibiotics from the logistics terminal. Since the descriptions don't actually say what the antibiotics do, and since I'm still a bit panicked over Scorpion's Necroa after watching everything that happened on the surface, I decided to have him play guinea pig and take the drug one more time, which was a horrible choice in hindsight. Unfortunately, to afford the antibiotics, I had to sell Scorpion's iconic white recon helmet, which has long since been beaten down and reduced to uselessness anyway. It turns out, antibiotics increases blood filtration, lessen pain, and increases overall immunity gain speed by nearly 10%. I think these antibiotics alone would have been enough to cure Scorpion, and a medicine like this is slowly revealing itself to be absolutely necessary in the event of overwhelming biochemical presence. At last, Scorpion has reached immunity and survived this round of Necroan infection. At some point in time, our stallion Boa gets the plague, but I'll be real, this happens all the time to him. He'll be fine in a couple days. Now that we're reaching a mild period of calm, now's the time for me to mention that if you weren't already aware, our research era is technically still in the Neolithic period. We can't even build most standard in-game structures and furniture like wind turbines and research benches. The stove and other crafting stations we possess, like the research bench, were all scavenged from other ruins. And I know that it's cruel that I'm still choosing to leave that paralyzed, crash-landed colonist behind, but I'll be real, the last thing we need is a paralyzed mouth to feed. My only regret is not putting her out of her misery sooner. There will be a time where we welcome more people to our ranks and subject them to living in actual hell, but now is not that time. The night following Scorpion's immunity is made interesting after a pack of arrow fleets migrate into our territory. Arrow fleets are essentially a mix between a land jellyfish and a gas-propelled balloon, meaning they have a tendency to combust upon death. This entire forest might go up in flames upon their inevitable death by way of shamblers, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Fire cleanses the dead, and malaria warheads. And what do you know? There's that inevitable forest fire. Scorpion and Maria, all the while, have been settling into their new sanctuary, while the carnage persists outside. All we have to do is finish researching culture, thus allowing us to develop our own ideology, thus allowing us to transition into the tribal research era. Finally, about 5 days after Scorpion's immunity, the shambler that infected him in the lower bunker has collapsed. We'll enter in due time. One thing that I noticed while looking at the areas affected by the wildfires is that the malaria bombs were lost, so that's one thing less to worry about, I guess. I don't know. One of the survivors of a trading caravan takes shelter in our walls, so I have Maria maintain reinforcements from the pursuing shamblers. And then, catastrophe strikes. I didn't notice Maria was finished with her work, so she idles her way to the surface just moments after this cow here lets the shamblers in. And watch closely now as I'm trying to dismiss this, Roman legionary type from being a visitor to my colony. Maria, for reasons only known by God Jesus himself, wanders right up to the last remaining shambler within our walls. And yes, this utter shitshow causes Maria to become infected with Necroa by sheer touch alone, and without any cell regenerators or antibiotics present, the infection quickly advances well past Maria's current immunity gain speed. While she treats herself and rests, Scorpion immediately heads below deck in hopes of finding medicine or salvage we can offer to the logistics terminal for more medicine. This level seems to be a series of maintenance tunnels that was once inhabited by the living. Now only corpses and the lethal rot gas they produce surrounding them remains. And while there is some decent loot hidden away down here, we fail to find any medicine, so we keep looting. Meanwhile, Maria's infection has advanced to over 10%, yet her immunity gain is less than 8%. The situation is getting dire, to say the least. And to make things worse, allied colonists actively infected with Necroa keep taking shelter within our bunker. I'm sure you can figure out what kind of problems that might cause. One of the maintenance shafts has a man well past saving. He's dying from rot lung and extreme malnutrition, but every second is so critical at this moment that I'll have to put him out of his misery later. Another room contains a lone, healthy Helixian, a type of foul xenohuman slug person made to survive off of rotting material like corpses, which is honestly a being that is extremely well suited for a scenario like ours. Unfortunately, we're unable to find any medicine, so we'll take what we can and offer it to the logistics terminal. With only 22% tend quality, the Necroa arcovirus stays one step ahead of Maria's immunity gain. Without wasting any time, Scorpion trades some of our salvage and gear to the warehouse terminal in exchange for some high-quality medicine and rations to treat his beloved and infected Maria. Actually, given that Maria is our best medic, I let her attempt to treat herself first, though her food poisoning and zombification limits her treatment effectiveness. But don't worry, Scorpion will take over caring for Maria from this point onward, and he'll also take this time to scavenge the surface during this brief, though critical period of calm. Scorpion finds himself some silver, some really good armor, and even an intel map, which when read will reveal the location of another ruin containing a bunker just like this one, which I'll read in due time. After scavenging, I take our only sleeping bag and place it in a cleaner environment for Maria to recover in. We still can't build beds, nor can I reinstall any of these beds within the barracks Scorpion is sleeping in. And this next round of treatment, as performed by Scorpion, is finally enough for Maria's immunity to slowly begin to catch up to her infection. After that, Scorpion repeats the process of transferring our salvage and gear from the surface to the bunker, and then looting whatever food he can from the surface as well. Finally, a couple days after infection, Maria's immunity surpasses her Necroa. Scorpion and Maria have saved each other's lives so many times now that I can't even track who's, more goated at this point. These two lovers make for one hell of a team. Meanwhile, Hall, the sole surviving Halixian slugman living in the maintenance tunnels underneath us, is seemingly content munching away on rotting corpses. Though, as you might notice later on, Hall will ultimately decide to leave the bunker willingly. So we'll have to add finding another monster to live in our basement to the checklist of never-ending shit we have to do. Finally, Maria reaches immunity, which is immediately followed up with her gaining the Inventor perk, which, to put it simply, means she'll research faster but work a little bit slower. The next thing that happens is the return of the monolith, which looms over the bunker from afar. And finally, Maria reads the intel map that we found, which reveals the location of an abandoned shopping mall about a day's west of our position, one that contains a subterranean level just like our bunker, one that I suspect to be inhabited by friend and foe. Maria will put her newly acquired inventor trait to the test and begin researching culture, which will finally unlock the ability for our colonists to develop their own ideology. Meanwhile, Scorpion continues doing what he's been doing on the surface. Maria will also make herself useful by beginning to secure the loot of the tunnels underneath us, though with only limited success, as the presence of so many corpses rapidly stresses her the hell out. Looking around pays off really well though, as we wind up finding 3 more intel maps down there among the rooms. Scorpion didn't even notice nor check these while trying to find medicine for Maria. Also, look at all these boxes we can loot. This is actually a mild bug, as most of these boxes have already been searched and there's nothing in them, but that was only a case for a handful. The rest did have loot in them. Finally, 149 days after crash landing, we can develop our own ideology. So, to put it simply, I created a fluid ideology known as the Lake Mountain Creed. Those who follow the creed believe in honest, hard labor, and don't care about wearing tattered or tainted clothing. We accept all races of xenohuman, but those who put in the work are respected above all. Walking this path of hard, dumb labor does result in a roughly 50% research speed penalty, although that's just a small price to pay. I went with this simple, fluid approach because I didn't want to devote myself to any playstyle without getting some input from you, actually, my dear viewer. So, what do you think Scorpion and Maria should become? Should we default to basic bitch cannibal sadism, slavery, and organ farming, or do some psychic research worshipping the very anomaly hunting them? Or should we be vampire worshipping pirates, or lean into the Mad Max Metro stalker lifestyle of salvaging the wasteland? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now that the creed has been established, we can take a breather and celebrate over a couple of rations that we bought from the warehouse terminal, and with, of course, a day's worth of hard work. This is also where we wish Hall good luck. May we meet again. In the evening, our two lovers spend the night on the surface and finally do something that they've never done before. Scorpion and Maria receive a distress signal from a Roman Senate faction about a day's ride west of us. As we mobilize to help our neighbors, it seems whatever forces attacked them have attacked us. These are gore hulks, servants of the anomaly tied to the monolith. A trick to killing them involves getting into melee range in order to prevent them from launching their spines at you, though with that in mind, we'll rely on our guns for this fight. And just when things can get more interesting, Maria contracts malaria, so I have her fall back immediately in order to get on top of the disease. Meanwhile, Scorpion gets the attention of an especially unique shambler who was once a modded quest giver named Sappho, now turned into a super lethal zombie that, funny enough, is still capable of offering her quest to us. Who would have thought that Sappho, Lady of the Sacrilege Hunters, would have been brought to this point? And that Sappho Shambler has some insane gear too, mostly because the modder that created her turned her into your usual cringy RimWorld anime waifu, so, now we're stuck with this. Anyway, Scorpion outmaneuvers the Sappho Shambler and drags one of the bleeding out gore hulks into the bunker. I think we found our new basement monster. Jokes aside, the gore hulk is dragged into the tunnels and kept into one of the rooms with virtually useless restraints. It will absolutely break out, but that's fine with me. We have plenty of sticks to beat it back into submission as needed. Anyway, a bit later, we're sent a care package from the Empire deserters containing food, medicine, and a reminder that Maria is indeed an Empire insurrectionist. While Scorpion grabs it, he notices, then investigates the monolith. The anomaly's surging presence attracts both friend and foe to our land, which should give Scorpion and Maria a chance to reach the distress signal. The camp is covered in flesh beasts, and anybody capable of lighting a distress signal in the first place is certainly no longer alive. I'd imagine this is an especially harrowing experience for Scorpion given his first encounter with flesh beasts. And these flesh beasts do what flesh beasts do best, which is bum rush the hell out of you. So despite taking some superficial damage, Scorpion and Maria defeat the entities and even get a chance to perform some field research on this land's crops to advance our next long-term research project, which is mushroom cultivation, a major step towards underground bunker longevity. We even find some decent weapons and furniture, some of which we can realistically haul back home when the time cometh. After cutting down all the beasts that we could, we gather what we can haul, food especially, and journey back home. Also, our pet Gorehulk woke up. I hope he enjoys his stay. Also, just before we get back to our territory, shamblers rip apart the local boomrat and boomalope populations, thus leading to a massive wildfire outbreak. Outbreak of wildfire? Whatever, you get it. Despite this, we still make it home alright. Thankfully, just about all of our walls are fireproof. All except perhaps the most important ones, the walls surrounding our gardens and our legendary stallion, Boa. Maria, due to some past traumatic event, refuses to beat out fires, so Scorpion will have to hold back the flames to the best of his ability. Yet, despite his best efforts, the fire inevitably spreads out of control. Shamblers are everywhere, so we'll have to harvest what crops we can, keep Boa safe inside our walls, and then let the walls burn. And then the earth started to shake. Flesh continues to blanket across our colony. The only way to stop it is by destroying the flesh mass heart via a specific series of steps currently unbeknownst to us. We'll have to research these nerve bundles in order to unlock the secret of the heart's destruction. But the heart is surrounded by acid-spitting lumps of flesh, and the rest of the map is covered in those extremely infectious shamblers that are just looking for an excuse to break into our walls. Thankfully, some nearby forest fires revealed to us just how weak the flesh is to fire, something we'll definitely keep in mind. These fires won't last forever, and pretty much all of these blocks of flesh have a chance to spawn another flesh beast upon their destruction, much like the creatures themselves. Given the surrounding shamblers and encroaching flesh, our colonists will simply stand tall and remain defiant. This bunker is ours. And that defiance certainly aggravates the heart. After enough time passes, the flesh beasts begin their assault on the bunker. Thankfully, they're only targeting our exterior defenses, for now at least. The flesh beasts continue their assault, all while more and more shamblers continue spilling out onto our land. I also made a massive mistake. Bells in the chat, I guess. Here I have Scorpion try to cheekily gun down an encroaching flesh beast, but I completely forgot that he was still recovering from the flu and nowhere near combat ready. So, naturally, Scorpion gets mauled to near death, but don't worry, he'll be okay. The majority of the blood loss was due to a well-placed stab in Scorpion's neck, something which Maria can have fixed up in no time. Now, we hide and research our asses off until we unlock mushroom cultivation. Finally, a day later, we unlock mushroom cultivation, which might just be the most important thing we've researched yet, given our circumstances. Our next research project will bounce between basic furniture and simple meals, which should bring our research era closer to tribal. Now we can begin cultivating a proper nutrifungus mushroom farm. We'll also take extra steps to ensure no light can possibly hit and therefore destroy the mushrooms. Not that we have any lights to begin with. We could turn on our generators, but they only have about 2 days worth of fuel, so we will continue in darkness. Sure enough, in time, the flesh beasts turn their attention towards the doors to our bunker, and while Maria faces off the tough spike banging on one of our doors, Scorpion brings Boa underground, our horse. Now, I'm not sure what happened on this next part here. I think this door is just cursed or something, but for whatever reason, the tough spike banging on our door is suddenly just let inside. The door isn't destroyed, and I don't think I misclicked Maria into stepping outside, but regardless, the door just opens. So Maria gets slightly beat up while she retreats to the underground, with the intent of jumping it on her terms. After that, Scorpion and Maria simply continue their long toil of research and crop turning, all while the flesh continues to amass. Our walls are thankfully strong enough to withstand the flesh. Our doors, however, are not so tough, and the flesh begins to cut into our territory. Remember, we have to be careful as any one of these walls might, upon their destruction, spawn another flesh beast. One thing I noticed is, despite the flesh collapsing our doors, the 25 steel it costs to make said door is completely refunded upon the door's destruction, so that should make the process of repelling the flesh a lot more manageable. After days of researching and surviving underground, the flesh has entirely blanketed the landscape, yet Maria and Scorpion stand strong. We traded some of our goods for more antibiotics from the warehouse terminal, and our farms are turning over enough crop to keep everybody, horse included, fed. We've even researched enough basic furniture to create prototypes. To put it simply, once enough research has been done, you can create prototype versions of the topic of your research. Prototypes take twice as long to construct, and the construction won't be at maximum HP upon creation, thus requiring repairs. We also can't build prototypes unless the research related to it is set as our current research. Finally, building prototypes gains us research points towards the related project. Now, that all being said, almost 200 days into this playthrough, we can finally build beds. They're not even standard RimWorld beds, but hey, they're still beds nonetheless. I was almost ready to say that, despite the flesh, we can still make the most out of the situation, but the flesh has more tricks up its sleeve. On occasion, the flesh will raise corpses from directly under the earth itself and into our walls. Corpses that, whenever a death pal roll in, are more than likely to stand up as shamblers. And if you've been keeping up with the series at this point, you know how absolutely bad that is. Now, with that in mind, the corpses risen in our walls will only animate if they're exposed to open sky. Any corpses under a roof will remain, waiting for an opportunity to rise. I didn't get the footage. I recorded for a little while and realized I didn't hit the record button. But one of these corpses actually managed to infect Scorpion in this way. He was walking along when suddenly a corpse shot out from under the earth and punched him, thus resulting in Necroa infection. But he took antibiotics, Maria treated him, and he's already well on his way past the Necroa and towards immunity. He will recover from this Necroa. Now, this next event, I'm not so sure we'll recover from. During the initial attack, Scorpion is shot in the head. Maria takes an equally nasty shot in the foot, and so our two colonists fall back. Thankfully, and much to my amazement, the bandits don't actually press their attack on us. They don't even attack our sacred stallion boa. We're more than capable of killing them, and the Purple Mesa bandits are more than capable of killing us. And so it seems the bandits have opted for a standoff. Scorpion and Maria are trapped, and so will hold back and continue to heal. As our colonists recover, the Purple Mesa gang entertain themselves by vandalizing the tunnels underneath us. Once they get bored of thrashing our tunnels, the bandits made their way to the surface, only to discover the oasis of flesh they've stranded themselves in. Luckily, our colonists have plenty of non-perishable survival meals in our reserve to keep us fed for several days. Not to mention our newly cultivated mushroom farm. But we only need to survive long enough to heal up and reclaim our bunker. Alas, several days after the Purple Mesa gang have begun to succumb to their hunger, Scorpion and Maria will attempt to take back what's theirs. We have to be careful. While these are a bunch of frontier-type invaders, they still have shotguns, and, you know, shotguns are shotguns no matter what you think of shotguns. It's about now that I realize one of the gang members, a woman named Alona, has a damn near bulletproof jacket that allows her to walk around with her lever-action shotgun like the damn Terminator. She's essentially bulletproof. Just when I thought I had the jump on these bandits, one of them gets the jump on us instead. This bandit, Keanu, uses his shotgun to blow off Maria's entire left arm, which he immediately follows up with by planting a shotgun slug in the middle of Scorpion's spine, causing him to collapse to the ground. Scorpion will have to try and drag himself to safety while Maria bandages her newly acquired stump. Despite the damage we endured, the bandits are driven into fleeing, which by no means makes them any less dangerous. Thankfully, both Scorpion and Maria will ultimately recover, though Scorpion's headshot scar and Maria's missing arm will forever serve as reminders of this grim affair. It isn't until the next day that Maria is able to return the favor to a starving, drug-withdrawn Keanu for the taking of her arm. Then the bulletproof Terminator named Alona, after marching towards Maria like Jason Voorhees, has her brain turned into a fine mist by Maria's chain shotgun. The following day, as Scorpion heals from food poisoning, a pair of extremely exotic xenohumans crashes onto our land. One of the xenohumans is known as a mycomorph, which is like a sentient, angry, sapient clicker from The Last of Us. The other is some sort of genetic experimental super soldier that's basically the Great Red Dragon and is powered by the ever-infamous and ever-lethal drug Luciferium. Do I even need to justify why I killed one and let the other bleed out? They are not staying here. Now that a sense of calm has been reached, we can bring our crops back online and start addressing the flesh that's overflowing into our bunker. I'll also begin taking steps to secure, contain, then protect the entrance to our bunker, which starts with some good old steel walls. The same security measures will be made at the underground entrance as well. As far as the corpses go, we'll burn them to prevent them from becoming shamblers. Finally, in celebration of Maria's missing arm and Scorpion's bullet lodged in his skull, the two will unwind by smoking some of the joints brought to us by those bandits and rest up for tomorrow. We got a lot of work to do. On the evening of day 200, pigskin raiders invade the bunker. Scorpion is still recovering from the flu, and our defenses aren't fully online, to say the least, though the traps we do have should suffice. We do put up one hell of a fight during the first engagement, though Scorpion is recovering from an extreme flu and is only so effective in holding them off. The newly punched bullet holes in his body don't help either. It takes the rest of our medicine in order to patch up both of our colonists, and while they recover, the pigskins vandalize our tunnels. Some of them fall victim to heat stroke thanks to the fires they lit while trying to burn it down. Given Maria's missing arm, as well as the damage she incurred, her ability to administer medicine to herself and Scorpion takes forever, to say the least. Meanwhile, Scorpion's extreme flu and blood loss leaves him unconscious. Then, while recovering, Maria's only remaining arm has a gunshot wound that becomes infected. What little medicine remains will be spent trying to stop the infection. Unfortunately, the warehouse terminal isn't offering any meds that we can afford nor use, and the only medicine we may have access to is what little we can loot from the pigskins we just shot. But one of the surviving pigskins, an especially dangerous one, is hovering around the entrance of our bunker. Risking an encounter with him right now is a death sentence, so Maria will take some of her antibiotics and hope for the best. Unfortunately, the infections get well ahead of the antibiotics and medicine used by Maria. Since Scorpion was unconscious, Maria had to treat her only infected arm with that very same arm. She can't amputate herself, and by the time Scorpion woke up, we were out of medicine and her infection was well past 80%. Yet her immunity hadn't even passed 60%. Her infection is terminal. All Scorpion can do now is hold her until she meets her end. The majority of Maria's gear is lost due to her death acidifier. No harm done, really. I'd rather it go out with her. Now is time to finish off the last pigskin and lay Maria to rest. Unfortunately, the loss of Maria drives Scorpion into a frenzy. He decides to cut down the last remaining pigskin using melee, which is horrible because that happens to be a pigskin with venom fangs and an aptitude for melee. This engagement leads to Scorpion receiving one highly venomous toxic bite that leaves him with only 20 hours left to live. He also gets knocked out cold by the pigskin, which causes a wild man in black to enter our territory, who is immediately lost to a horde of shamblers. Finally, the pigskin will ultimately bleed out from Scorpion's berserk and die in our tunnels by his lonesome. It takes nearly the rest of the day before a beaten and broken Scorpion can bury Maria. May Maria rest in peace. Ever since Maria's death, we've remained in the bunker, researching as a form of mourning, and we've come a long ways, as you can see. Thanks to the cultivation of Zapcap, a type of mushroom capable of emitting up to 10 watts of power, volts, I forget, we have established a passive power grid. We have hardened our defenses, established a corral for our stallion boa, and thrive off of our nutrifungus farms. All of the steel and components we used were salvaged from scrap found all throughout the bunker, and especially the lower tunnels, which no longer resemble tunnels and has become more of a proper basement. I won't go over all the additional mining or crafting efforts we've undergone during our entombment, nor will I go over all the research we've unlocked. What matters is that we've advanced well out of the Neolithic and well into a sort of late medieval and mid-industrial age equivalent, like a post-apocalypse survivor or something. The most recent innovation we've made, as you can probably guess, is the development and creation of servitor mechanoids. We only have one at the moment, an agrihand bot which I've named FarmBot, who is already making our lives a hell of a lot easier by tending to our crop. Unfortunately, these mechanoids produce toxic waste packs, so we've researched and created a single toxic waste pack generator. To put it simply, at our current state, the bunker can fully take care of itself, horse care and farm work included, for about a week straight with just FarmBot alone. Automating the bunker is important because, despite being trapped here by foot, I have a plan to get us out of here using the sky. And don't worry, the intention here isn't to leave the bunker behind. I see no reason to abandon our spacious coffin, though we are getting low on resources and salvage to further our mechanoid efforts. Hence the escape plan. A hot air balloon. It's been nearly 100 days since we've stepped out onto the surface, which is defined by an oasis of living, growing, hateful flesh. Funny enough, during the creation of our balloon, a hostile mechanoid that crash-landed here, God knows how long ago, attempts to hunt down Scorpion. Meanwhile, our balloon is automatically moved to an unroofed tile, which happens to be on top of our stairs. That's my bad, I should have made sure the roof was removed on the landing platform itself. But no matter. The balloon itself is nearly destroyed during the inevitable shootout that follows after the mechanoid breaches the flesh and engages with Scorpion. Then, after a day's preparation, Scorpion leaves the bunker and takes to the skies. FarmBot and Boa, Maria watch over you. Our destination, the abandoned mall discovered by Maria herself so long ago. Finally, Scorpion takes to the skies. Oh, and by the way, you can ignore this game over warning. Everything will go back to normal once Scorpion lands and steps out of the balloon. After what I'd imagine to be both an enchanting and terrifying 4-hour flight, we reach the abandoned mall. And it is massive. To keep things interesting, I decided to land the balloon almost immediately, in an area that isn't already swarmed by hordes of shamblers or the friendly survivors that will fall trying to hold the shamblers back. We're on the surface now, without the relative safety of the flesh bordering every part of the map. Any threat, be they supernatural, anomalous, whatever, can finally reach out and grab Scorpion for the first time in nearly 100 days. As Scorpion lands, we can unpause and behold some of the ensuing chaos. Finally, Scorpion departs from his balloon, which was spotted by a number of shamblers who immediately start making their way towards Scorpion's location. Our first and most important step is finding a roof and a door to hide under and behind. The last thing we want to do is hang around the edge of the map. Unfortunately for everybody here, we have a zero-tolerance policy for anybody infected with Necroa. Friend or foe, if you've been touched by the dead, I will have Scorpion throw a grenade at you. Despite our attempts, we fail to breach this entrance to the mall. We'll have to fall back. Meanwhile, shamblers close in on our balloon. By the time Scorpion makes his way back to the balloon, shamblers are seemingly closing in from both sides of Scorpion. Unfortunately, despite our attempts, the balloon is ultimately lost. So be it, we'll have to salvage and then build another one later. For now, we just need to get ourselves safe. In hindsight, we could have landed the balloon in this open-air food court, but it is what it is. Speaking of food court, Scorpion is able to slip inside, grab himself a fresh can of stewed muffalo, and eat like a king, even if only for a moment. Well, that's what we intended on doing, until we're spotted by Raymond Murder Helmet. Murder Helmet. Slaughter Helmet. I'm gonna call him Murder or Slaughter Helmet. A raider, infected with the equivalent of the T-virus. I believe it was called the Slaughter virus or something like that, the Rampage virus. Wearing a cataphract slaughter helmet with, I believe, the Cyrillic word for kill written across it. This absolute specimen can one-shot, doesn't bleed, and does not feel pain. We will do everything we can to avoid Slaughter Helmet over here. Okay, after a very good first engagement with Murder Helmet here, Scorpion will ultimately have to yield and find another way in. He flees the mall for the time being, sets up camp nearby, gathers himself, and then attempts to breach once again. After a bit of time, Scorpion makes his second attempt to enter the mall. And this is kind of done over and over again. I kind of have him enter and leave until we get a good vantage point. But of course, this is Murder Helmet's mall. We are the trespassers here. During their next engagement, Scorpion names his custom sniper rifle Whirlwind, which I thought was pretty cool. What a cool name to get a rifle name during an engagement with this guy. Despite yet another good duel between the two, Murder Helmet drives Scorpion away from the mall. Once more, as Scorpion rests, we can visually scout the mall and admire the king of the mall in action. After a couple more hours of rest, Scorpion makes his third attempt to breach the mall. After dumping a bunch of cans into Scorpion's backpack, he makes his way to one of the rolling shutters, disassembles it, and reveals nearly the entirety of the mall. The room behind the rolling shutters themselves hides an old restaurant and kitchen therein. Scorpion will then have to hole up for a moment, while you and I can spend a second to look at the rest of the mall. Oh, and it's also about here that my game crashed, probably from running OBS and a RimWorld game with 4 map instances at once. So I had to reload the game, re-enter the mall, and when I did re-enter, I entered through a different restaurant. I'm mainly on the lookout for any means of entering the lower levels of the mall. this place should have a sort of bunker of its own. And I mean, just imagine for a second, if we do secure the mall bunker for ourselves, then use balloons and other means to travel between the two bunkers, well, that would be a very interesting thing indeed. But we can't daydream on that topic for too long. Murder Helmet is still alive after all. Anyway, in time, Scorpion finds the remains of an old security room, which should be a good spot to hole up in for the time being. We'll claim everything within the room and then start looting. Meanwhile, some well-equipped shamblers introduce themselves to the local auto turret set up by the survivors of the past. After finding, then equipping a Rattler rifle that we found, I think it's time to address Scorpion's #1 mood killer, his Supreme Expectations debuff, which comes from him being the leader of the Lake Mountain Creed. So we'll perform the ritual necessary to relieve him of that title, which will worsen his mood for a time, but that's a small price to pay for keeping a clear mind. And, of course, Murder Helmet shows up. And while he doesn't exactly go for the doors or anything, he sort of traps Scorpion within the building for the time being. Okay, now that we're certain Murder Helmet isn't trying to break down our doors, let's have Scorpion relinquish his crown, a title that, without Maria nor anybody else, means nothing nowadays. Once that's completed, Scorpion will collapse the walls and reveal the neighboring rooms, which are nothing more than bathrooms. We'll use the same method to break into the neighboring clothing store, its backroom closet specifically. Thanks to the looming presence of Murder Helmet, Scorpion will remain in here scrapping and researching for the time being. It's a good thing we grabbed all those cans. It's funny, we basically left the bunker only to get confined to an inferior surface-level shelter, bunker equivalent room. You get the irony. Here we could see Murder Helmet finally beginning to starve to death, while also standing around in rot gas, while slowly gaining Necroa, yet somehow bro is chillin', for now at least. Finally, after remaining hidden in our shelter for a couple days, Murder Helmet dies. I have no clue what killed him. Maybe it was rot lung or he starved to death. I don't know, and I won't ask. He's just dead now. I've been AFK letting Scorpion research this whole time, so, hey, it works for me. And now that he's dead, Scorpion can finally step outside into the freezing 5 a.m. cold, strip Murder Helmet of his effects, and grab as much components, medicine, steel, cloth, anything, and everything that we can. All of it is coming back with us to our makeshift shelter. It is then that Scorpion, after unloading his inventory, claims his foul reward. He dons the slaughter helmet, for he is now champion of the mall, and the slaughter helmet is his crown. Okay, after that's done, time will be spent gathering as much food and supplies as possible before salvaging all the supplies necessary to create a new balloon. That very same balloon is then built in the nearby wilderness, which brings Scorpion home. I should mention, these balloons can't carry much to begin with. Its greatest boon to us is simply its mobility, so we must only take what's absolutely necessary. Now that we're home, Scorpion can unwind and prepare for our next set of projects. It is now 55:05. It has officially been 4 RimWorld years since we crash landed, and in a couple more days, it will officially be 5 RimWorld years since we crash landed. Thanks to that first excursion to the mall, we now have enough trade goods and resources to gestate our next mechanoid, a process that takes 3 days. So we'll spend those next couple days furthering our research into microelectronics, with the eventual goal of being able to perform orbital trading and component fabrication. We'll also make a second mechanoid charging station and prepare to make yet another mechanoid once the current one hatches. Anyway, let us warmly welcome a freshly gestated liftbot to the bunker. May liftbots serve us well. Now, by the power of FarmBot and LiftBot combined, the bunker's food rotation is completely online. Crops are planted, harvested, and taken exactly where they need to be, and Scorpion doesn't have to LiftBot a finger. As I set the stage to gestate our next mechanoid, don't take that sentence out of context, a massive stroke of luck hits us in the form of an event that I simply call classic to this playthrough. I call it lucky because we've been trapped down here the moment we re-entered the bunker from the balloon, thanks to the flesh and some poorly placed sandbags. We can't leave. So you see, as Scorpion relaxes in his kitchen living quarters research lab workshop, a ship crash event occurs. Oh, and I've tweaked my Crashland settings to occur all at once. Let us see the carnage unfold. Thankfully, the ship crash did not have a reactor, and even better, one of the ship chunks lands directly on top of the entrance to our bunker, thus allowing us to return to the surface. Furthermore, the ship chunk that crashed onto our entrance was a crypto sleep pod full of critically injured survivors. This might be our only chance to make a friend here on the bunker. As Scorpion rushes to the rescue, the site of the crash itself, which is technically contained in an interior, boils to extreme temperatures in a matter of seconds. Whoever has crashed in there is dying of their injuries, covered in fuel, and lying inside of an oven. Any chance of Scorpion saving somebody here, however slim, is completely lost thanks to a single flesh beast tri-spike that not only prevents Scorpion from saving anybody, but even from getting back into the bunker itself. Thankfully, Scorpion is able to narrowly escape just as the room hits a cool 960 degrees Fahrenheit. This reckless stupidity, like all other things in this godforsaken RimWorld, injured Scorpion to the point of being within 13 hours away of death. But he made it, he'll heal up, and everything will be okay. Meanwhile, everybody and everything within the boiling crash site itself disappears beneath a glowing beacon of cleansing fire. To nobody's surprise, the flesh doesn't take this kind of pain too well, and its autoimmune response triggers thusly. Now, you want to know the worst part about this? This is still footage of me before I was aware that the entrance was blocked in the first place. In other words, this would have been the luck and chance we needed to secure, contain, and then protect the bunker's entrance. But since I didn't know that the entrance could be blocked yet, I didn't do anything about it. What can I say? I'm Sleepy Jack, not Pete Complete. I've got plenty more mistakes to make. So yeah, Scorpion is now super trapped in here. We can't leave once again. Anyway, being trapped down here for an indeterminate amount of time is really a blessing in disguise. We'll focus up on increasing the wattage output of our zap cap farms by expanding the crop, build a second waste pack generator, which outputs as... Being trapped down here for an indeterminate amount of time is really a blessing in disguise. We'll focus up on increasing the wattage output of our zap cap farms, build a second waste pack generator, which outputs a much needed 1K voltage when in use, and research sun lamps until we can build a sun lamp prototype in the basement. Unfortunately, the sun lamp requires a brutal 2900 watts of power to maintain. Our current power grid is set up such that all the power produced by the zap caps here in the basement are wired directly to a power junction box. That power junction box is manually configured to output all of its stored power to the junction box above us in the bunker. But since the sun lamp requires so much power and it's in the basement, I'll have to regularly flip the upper level junction box to instead output here to the lower levels. To put it simply, when the sun lamp is on, it slowly depletes us of about a third of our power source. When the sun lamp is turned off for resting periods, we manually reroute the power back to the bunker level, which contains our batteries. This manual flip-flopping between the two is only a temporary annoyance, nothing a couple of well-placed batteries can't fix. We have to be stingy with our resources. We are stuck here after all. Also, let us introduce our helping hand for this project, BuildBot. Yeah, I don't know, I'm not really sure what to name these robots. But hey, let me ask you something. If I made a Patreon, would you be down to support it? I was thinking maybe I could take like the first 3 patrons and have them name a robot of their choice or something. I don't know. I really like making these vids. I can't imagine how much faster and better they'd be if I could do it full time. You know, go figure. YouTuber says he wants to do it full time. Water's also wet. Anyways, meet BuildBot. By their powers combined, LiftBot, HaulBot, and BuildBot, God, those names suck, alongside their Mechanitor Overlord Scorpion, can finally assemble a proper underground greenhouse. Imagine eating a meal that isn't made of mushrooms or canned food. I can hardly believe it. As for the farm itself, we'll grow a wide variety of foodstuffs, cotton, weed, herbal medicine that isn't weed, the usuals. And now, with all that being said, it is back to the never-ending toil of scrapping, trading, researching, and waiting for a new way out. We'll spend the first month of the new year making weapons, research kits, scrapping old workbenches for material, the usual. As far as the bunker terminal goes, the thing regularly runs out of silver, so we have to either barter our goods to put some silver in its pocket, or wait for the next cycle of merchandise to roll in. The main trade commodities we're after is cloth and components, the cloth being for whenever we get another chance at building a balloon. Also, the cloth that we grow should be quite valuable to the bunker terminal itself, so an all-around valuable trade good. Also, meet FarmBot 2. I could have made a shotgun or cleaning robot, but I don't know, just think about it. FarmBot 2 is clearly the superior choice. Anyway, thanks to our next construction, a third waste pack generator, we now have the potential to produce enough power to supply both our batteries and the sun lamp full time, should we choose. We'll also move one of the larger batteries to the basement to better support the demands of the almighty sun lamp. Right, so you get the gist of Scorpion's life down here in the bunker, and since we're trapped down here, this little research cycle will continue without any immediate chance of escape. It isn't until another weeks or so worth of confinement here that a new chance of escape presents itself in the form of Kate. You see, I receive a typical rescue request, one in which a survivor seeks shelter in your colony from manhunting beasts in exchange for joining your colony. So I blindly accepted, expecting this to be just another one of the many quests doomed to fail due to the presence of the flesh. But things happen a little differently this time. The survivor enters our map and is a 40-year-old femme fatale Black Widow psychopath assassin type named Kate, who is being hunted by some feral cheetahs. Her stats clearly reveal her to be extremely efficient in her role as an intimate assassin. I'm almost afraid to leave her and Scorpion locked in the same room together. But here's the thing. If we have her attempt to tear her way to the bunker, the flesh will absolutely kill her. So, Caitlin won't come to the bunker. Instead, she will be our eyes from the outside. It's already nearing 100 degrees. Heat stroke is already beginning to affect Kate. Thankfully for us, Kate not only cuts away the flesh unchallenged, but is able to escape the territory entirely. It'll be dangerous. Kate will have to cross the overheating deserts and forests unarmed and without supplies. But if she plays her cards right, Kate could not only free Scorpion, but team up with him and go anywhere and do anything. All she has to do is survive. It's been 19 days since the assassin named Kate agreed to help Scorpion escape the bunker. Unfortunately, a majority of those 19 days were spent seeking shelter from an extreme heat wave that has only recently passed. Now that temperatures are more tolerable, 19 days later, Kate can begin scavenging the abandoned mall we discovered last episode before kicking off her plan to save Scorpion. So here's the plan. Step 0, equip Kate with as much protection as we can scavenge. Step 1, secure, contain, and protect as much loot as possible, specifically deteriorating loot. The important stuff that's left outside and or unroofed. Step 2, gather ourselves and create a new hot air balloon. One that will be used to land directly on top of the rubble that's keeping Scorpion from returning to the surface. But, here's the issues with this plan. The first issue is that Kate is a career intimate assassin with the psychopath and masochist traits, meaning she absolutely refuses to perform first aid on herself. I shouldn't have to explain why Kate being unable to admin first aid on herself is such a big problem. And the second issue is Kate needs to level up her construction score to 4 before she can attempt to create the air balloon. I believe it is currently at 3. So you could see the predicament we're in. Despite being dangerous as hell, this ruined mall, sat alone among the savannah wasteland, has everything Kate needs to save Scorpion. Kate just needs to be extremely damn careful. And, judging by her mental break, which I'm just now realizing is an absolutely horrible portent for things to come. Yeah, I don't know. Kate, listen, Kate, you gotta lock in, Kate. Kate's overall shitty attitude comes from her relatively high expectations and severe lack of over 2 weeks without recreational activity. I don't blame her for having a sad wander. It is a sort of rite of passage of our colony. Can you really consider yourself a member of Lake Mountain if your will to live hasn't been deconstructed to the quantum level? I don't think so. Anyway, you can see the problem here. We're not the only ones out here in the mall. Raiders regularly appear, looking for all the loot that we want. So let's just hope any wandering scavs steer clear of Kate. It isn't until Kate wanders into the makeshift shelter that Scorpion holed up in before she breaks out of her sad wandering. There's something about Kate's senses clearing up after finding the very shelter of the man she's trying to save that I find weirdly cinematic. This whole damn series is cinematic as hell. It plays out like a TV show or something, you know what I mean? It's a good thing she wandered into Scorpion's old hideout as... Look, I don't know why I'm trying to word it like... Look, bro, she got high and she felt better. Right, so now that Kate is stoned out of her mind, she can use this artificial happiness to begin gearing up. When her first day of scavenging nears its end, I realized Kate would have looked a hell of a lot better if I got a mod that allowed hair and helmets to appear together. What a lovely gal. Anyway, you're starting to get the drill. Rest, eat, scavenge, find a new gun or worthwhile piece of armor, then repeat. That all being said, there is one other thing Kate's on the lookout for, and that's for any means to access the lower or upper portion of the mall itself. If you recall, this mall should have a sort of bunker equivalent of its own. We just need to find the entrance to it, which I'll say now has been humorously in front of us all along. You see, after wandering into this sort of IKEA megastructure sat here in the heart of the mall, I spotted a collapsed escalator in the middle of it, which made me wonder of all the uncovered escalators that there may be hidden on the map itself. Sure enough, after doing a map search, we find that very escalator that Kate is able to scale. The escalator itself is, as you can see, well, it's been out here in the open all along. Now, I know Kate can't heal herself and we have to be careful and avoid contact, but look, I just had to go in there. You know how it is. If you've been sticking around with this series for long enough, then you have a general idea of the mess we're going to encounter. Be they hostiles, friendlies, zombies, shamblers, mechanoids, it doesn't matter. The upper floor of the mall is, for now, simply a war zone, actively working, shooting, and killing towards a deathly silence. We can simply observe and hopefully come out on top. While you and I were admiring the carnage, Kate has spent the rest of that day, as well as the morning of the next one, this one, scavenging and patching holes throughout various parts of the mall, thus ensuring no loot can deteriorate from exposure to the elements. I'd almost be willing to say that things are going pretty damn alright here on the Savannah Wastes Mall, except Kate's biggest problem here is apparently herself. I mean, this woman's expectations will not let up despite chain smoking like Snoop Dogg. Her attitude, I promise, will be the end of her. I'll be real. The reason Kate's expectations are so high is because she wishes to build a number of structures that are tied to our ideology, the Lake Mountain Creed. I was in the long process of making some of these structures, as well as well, attempting to make the very blimp itself. We couldn't make the air balloon, but I was going to get ready to build it. Despite all that, one of the worst possible things that could have happened happens in the form of a necronoid skipgate assault. Oh god. I'm not going to explain what necronoid skipgate assaults are, I'll just let you see for yourself. And take comfort in knowing that during the assault, at some point, Kate reaches her next and last mental breakdown that she will ever have. It seems, despite our best efforts, Scorpion will remain trapped in the bunker. So, I have a confession to make. I used dev mode and spawned in a sight stealer and tough spike, beat them up, got beaten up, and then contained them. I did this because I have spent 13 collective hours IRL doing nothing but research. You wanna know why some of these vids take so long to come out? It's because I have literally nothing to show you. It's a good problem to have, don't get me wrong. You know, I could've used dev mode to free Scorpion, but I accept the challenge. But at least let me, research the very entities related to the anomaly containing me here in the first place, We used to have a different entity to research, but Scorpion beat it to death while grieving over the death of Maria so long ago. So, I don't know, pretend that these flesh beasts wandered into the bunker at some point, I guess. I mean, the map is covered in them after all. And I'll tell you what, whenever we're able to return to the surface, I'll kill these entities and get us some actual ones. For what it's worth, Scorpion doesn't even have the psychic connection necessary to perform just about half of the rituals we're researching anyways. I went out of my way to make a cool ritual room and everything, but Scorpion can't even use it until he interfaces with the monolith once again. Alright, with all that in mind, I'll give you a brief rundown of what Scorpion's been up to during his entombment. For starters, our next mechanoid, a clean sweeper mech, has just finished gestating. I've decided to name him RoombaBot, or Roombot for short. Our next and final mechanoid we can gestate is going to be a Militor mech, which has the unique directive of acting as Scorpion's watchdog and protector, equipped with a small mini shotgun. With all that in mind, I think now is a good time to mention I have opened up a Patreon for the channel. For those who choose to invest in Scorpion's survival, I'll let you suggest a name for Scorpion's mechanoids, as well as participate in polls that will decide the fate of Scorpion himself. I'm really glad y'all like the show so far. I'm quite frankly amazed Scorpion is still alive, and I'm just so damn glad that y'all can be here to experience his tale, so, thank you. And cheers to Scorpion's survival. And, I don't know, I'm just glad you're here, man. As for Scorpion himself, he's been down here a long time now, and he will continue to remain down here without any sign of freedom for just a little while longer. It all started with a crashed shuttle containing a sanguiphage and her many thralls. A sanguiphage is simply a RimWorld equivalent of a genetically modified vampiric xenohuman. Not so long after this shuttle crashes, the rest of the ship, 77 days after the last ship crash, strikes the colony. It seems this ship once belonged to the Profaned Legion, which is essentially the Army of the Dead from the Army of the Dead movie. So, in short, a vampire and her thralls alongside a ship of the Profaned Legion has crashed onto the surface of the bunker. Among the Profaned Legion's ranks that survives the crash is a fucking undead dragon and undead Hulk. I apologize if your immersion is spoiled. I was perfectly fine with having a legion of undead, I just wasn't expecting them to have a dragon. I don't know, I like to imagine that maybe the thrall, the vampire and her thralls corrupted a ritual and they raised a dragon and then their ship crashed over a colony or something. I don't know, but that is a freaking zombie dragon and, well, anyway, let's see what happens. This is where things start getting interesting. For starters, due to the RimWorld's sun dying, the entire planet has succumbed to a brutal ice age. As of this moment, it's already nearing negative 100 degrees on the surface. With all that in mind, the vampire and her freezing thralls, after the profane ship finishes crashing, have begun tunneling towards the bunker itself. So too have a couple of mechanoids, which have been stranded amongst the flesh for a long damn time. I'm really not sure why they've started to burrow towards the bunker itself. Perhaps it's due to the freezing temperatures. I think the Ice Age temperatures have rendered the flesh mass heart innate, for as you will see in time, it has stopped beating, and any of the flesh that's being destroyed isn't growing back. Meanwhile, from the opposite direction, mechanoids attempt to intercept the vampire and her thralls. They, after cutting down the flesh, well, they come face to face with the dragon itself. Meanwhile, the vampire and her thralls will soon begin attempting to sap one of the walls between them and the entrance of the bunker and the mechanoids themselves. Once the wall is breached, the vamp and her thralls come face to face with the dragon itself. Understandably, being mauled by an undead dragon among the freezing cold causes the raiding thralls to flee. I'm sure there's a Game of Thrones joke that can be made in there somewhere, but it's about then that I noticed something rather incredible. Both the undead dragon and undead colossus, the one that's lying over there on the floor, 6 hours left to live or whatever, are not only friendly to us, but they have joined our faction. I repeat, the undead dragon and undead colossus that fell out of the sky have joined our faction willingly. This might be the greatest gift ever granted to us by Randy Random. Thankfully, both of these undead giants aren't animated by the same anomalous power that animates shamblers. They are able to withstand the cold temperatures and both have omnivorous diets. The dragon, aka the bunker's newfound guardian, should be fine, though the colossus is nearing death. It seems now is as good a time as any for Scorpion, after spending roughly 170 overall days underground, can return to the surface and bear witness to the frozen hellscape that the planet has become. I can't even imagine what it must be like stepping out into extreme sub-zero temperatures, gunning down a vampire's thrall, then being eyed down and selected as a worthy master to an undead dragon. I'd love to hear suggestions for what this layer guardian could be named. Another shout out to the Patreon, by the way. But anyway, thanks to Hallbot, or Liftbot rather, who has dropped off a shipment of about half of our cloth reserve, Scorpion can take this cloth and begin quickly establishing sandbags in the immediate area, just in case the flesh attempts to, grow back and overflow and then block us in here all over again. And guess what? Only one survivor remains among the sanguiphage and her little underlings, and that's the vampire itself. All of her thralls are dead or dying from both hypothermia or their injuries. Scorpion is no exception to this, by the way. We can't stay outside for too long. But all of the thralls are dead, leaving only the vampire herself. We'll keep this in mind, but for now, let us attempt to save the Colossus. Actually, it's about now that I noticed both of these undead titans can be drafted. They have quite literally chosen us as their keepers, and they serve us. So be it. This RimWorld is covered in all sorts of living, dead, synthetic, and organic, and genetic monstrosities. Most of them are trying to kill us, but these two are here to save us, I suppose. So, Scorpion can instead focus on building some sandbags and trying to gather some of the loot that he can, while we draft the undead Colossus itself to go straight into our bunker. As for the big friggin' dragon, look, that thing is staying out here. As Scorpion moves in on capturing the vampire, a corrupted obelisk falls out of the sky, which, look, we're just gonna lean into the eldritch horror aspect. I don't know what that thing is, I just know it's gonna keep growing more and more unstable unless we continuously stabilize it. But Scorpion can't even be out here for more than a couple minutes without succumbing to hypothermia. So, there's just a terrifying lone Lovecraftian obelisk outside among the vampires and flesh and all the other, look, you get it, right? It's the horror shit. Look, we're just gonna grab the vampire and get out of there ASAP. After successfully containing the vampire, we can turn our attention to the undead Colossus, which is spraying corpse fluid everywhere from the absolute plethora of injuries it has endured during its time on the surface. We will use my completely useless ritual room, because remember, Scorpion can't use any anomalous or void psychic rituals because he hasn't interfaced with the monolith yet. Anyway, we'll repurpose that ritual room into a sort of holding cave for the undead Colossus. We'll also be sure to split some of our mushroom reserves so that, we keep the Colossus fed on a steady diet of fungus. Much like our horse, Boa. A day later, as Scorpion regains his body heat and continues repairing the undead Colossus, our robots Liftbot and Buildbot will head to the surface in hopes of securing it. Buildbot will reinforce the surrounding area with some of our wood, while Liftbot will haul any unroofed corpses into a roofed area, specifically one that can be accessed by the mighty zombie lizard itself, the one that has taken residence here. More importantly, corpses that are under a roof cannot be reanimated into shamblers. Shamblers can, without a doubt, infect our undead giants here with Necroa. And I mean, just imagine that for a second. A shambler undead dragon, or shambler undead colossus. Good lord. It's a good thing we had Liftbot move the corpses, since, as you probably noticed, a death pall has fallen over the map, meaning unroofed corpses are turning into shamblers. But now that the corpses are put in place, Hallbot can start gathering damn near everything within reach of him. We'll also have BuildBot roof the more or less secured part of the surface. Thankfully, the flesh itself acts as a wall, meaning anything kept in here, corpses included, will remain frozen and without deterioration. The surface of the bunker has transformed into a sort of post-apocalyptic equivalent of a classical fantasy dragon's cave. Except, instead of a living dragon and gold, it's this. Also, now that Scorpion is able to return to the surface, we can get rid of our ill-gotten entities. About 4 days after the crash, while construction of the ever-valuable fabrication bench is underway, the obelisk reaches maximum instability and collapses. A series of what are apparently humans begins to spill out of the structure. The fight against the strange humans is easy enough, perhaps a little too easy since I'm now realizing it would be worthwhile keeping one or more of these humans imprisoned. Our vampire needs a steady blood supply after all. Unfortunately, most of these humans will succumb to hypothermia or their injuries. All except for one very, very unlucky winner. While Scorpion patches up our new prisoner, an elderly slaughterer named Hitomi, BuildBot will be sent topside to repair our defenses. On the topic of prisoners, by the way, the vampire itself is a centuries-old mafia boss named Teresa Matthews. We'll talk about both of these prisoners soon enough. For now, I'll have Scorpion warm himself back up, while Liftbot and BuildBot head topside and, secure the shelter. Finally, after the prisoners are stabilized, Scorpion can barter tons of the newfound loot we salvaged in exchange for all the cloth necessary to build, once again, an air balloon. I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. I'm more so focused on securing the topside entrance. Even if we did want to fly somewhere, like to another location which may have a bunker like ours, the RimWorld sun is dying. This shit is frozen. Though, not all of it. As you can see, along the equator here, there's a sort of green belt that's formed, where temperatures are, well, I use the term stable loosely, but they average at about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. which is a hell of a lot better than the negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit that we're stuck in. There might be a paradise on this planet still. And, even better, a paradise which might have a bunker in it. Unfortunately, and this is my own fault, BuildBot leaves the relative safety of the surface shelter during the little robot's attempt to roof an unroofed part of the shelter itself. This means, without me noticing, BuildBot left the shelter, went around the corner, and was promptly mauled to death by shamblers. Scorpion, after some preparations are made, will attempt to retrieve BuildBot. Now, it's hard to tell when or how it happened. Perhaps the Shambler's turret pack has infected bullets, but that mild skirmish resulted in Scorpion contracting Necroa. For those who don't know, Necroa, when maxed out in infection, results in the infected turning into a Shambler. Necroa that's already at 14% infection, while Scorpion is still at a measly 2.6 immunity gain. Scorpion will take one of the 3 remaining antibiotics that we have in our reserve, then head straight to bed after patching himself with the best medkit we can give him. As Scorpion rests, my mind can't help but wander, specifically towards the very sanguiphage we captured. A vampire more than capable of granting Scorpion immortality, should it come to it. Though we can reach the surface, it offers us no solace. Temperatures have dropped to an eye-freezing sub 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Hostiles continue to pile up on the surface. And, worst of all, a horde of necronoids, separated only by a fragile wall of flesh, is about to be unleashed onto our territory. Despite fires cutting down a majority of the horde, the necronoids can and will hunt down anything that belongs to us. The undead giant and dragon, as well as our mechanoids, will have to remain under the bunker until this threat is dealt with. And things are only made more interesting as now that the necronoids have collapsed the flesh, isolating us from the rest of the RimWorld, all sorts of strange creatures have begun entering the territory to see what they've been missing out on. Some of these strange creatures, of course, being more necronoids. No matter who or what tries to enter the territory, the necronoids annihilate in under a minute. Even the anomaly itself can't withstand the threat of the necronoid. Thankfully, after enough time and shamblers, these necronoids are temporarily cut down, giving Scorpion and his mechanoids time to establish a sort of escape tunnel that leads us straight out of here from the opposite side of whatever horror is going on. We also kidnapped ourselves an entity from the surface, properly this time, no need for dev mode. Though, we probably won't have anything to study as far as the anomaly goes for the time being. The big thing we need is a way out of here. If you find yourself in a similar scenario like this, I would not recommend using steel walls like this, as the flesh easily collapses it, I guess you could say, by overgrowing. But remember that given the absolutely freezing temperatures of the planet at the moment... Oh great, the necronoids are back. A necrosion generator, a sort of necronoid terramorpher device, slams onto the surface. Its sole purpose is to corrupt, then mutate all material into necronoid forces. All while our undead giant, tasked with strip mining away to the Fleshmass Heart and Void Monolith themselves, is overran by flesh beasts. Meanwhile, our undead dragon attempts to cut down the necrosion generator itself using toxic fire breath, which reveals an absolute... Holy shit, watch this, dude, just watch this. The dragon is able to fall back in time, though the same cannot be said for the giant, who was unfortunately stun-locked into a permanent dying state. The undead can't bleed out nor starve, so the only thing the giant has to do, or, well, has to worry about, is a stray necronoid ripping him apart, otherwise he should be fine. Despite these setbacks, the fire is completely decimating the necrosion generator in its presence. Now we just have the horde itself to worry about, which, as you'll notice, has the means of increasing its ranks. After 2 long weeks of watching the horde dominate the surface, our salvation arrives on the final day of the year 5506, 1 day short of 7 RimWorld years since Scorpion crashed here. This salvation takes the form of a blizzard. The blizzard drops the already freezing planet to nearly negative 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures so cold that the necronoids themselves suffer from hypothermia and begin to split and collapse and die of the cold. By the end of day 1, year 7, the necronoids are a husk of what they used to be. While waiting and watching the necronoids fall, one of the few remaining civilizations on the planet contacts our bunker in hopes of using it as a dumping ground for the toxic waste packs. In exchange, they offer us, among other things, a vanometric power cell, which is essentially a highly fragile device that produces a free 1000 watts of power. The power cell being offered to us is on the smaller end. It only produces about 500 free watts, which is still worth plenty to us. We could easily contain and then freeze the toxic waste packs themselves, but I have a different idea. I'm actually going to let the waste packs dissolve and then pollute the surface, if only to render it an even more inhospitable ground to anybody who isn't already in our bunker. It isn't until the 3rd day of the new year that the freeze kills off the rest of the necronoids, and temperatures return to an average of negative 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures relatively survivable enough for Scorpion, so long as he keeps his thermal gear on. Our first and most immediate steps to reclaiming the surface involves repairing any destroyed doors and patching any holes in the roof. Our mechanoids, Printer and Hallbot, will handle the construction work. As for Scorpion himself, we're going to use this chance to address some long unfinished business he has between himself and the flesh mass heart, the very thing that drowned this land in flesh and ruin so long ago. Our undead giant reached a final death trying to reach the flesh mass heart, though his sacrifice paved the way for Scorpion to reach it himself. It isn't until now, roughly 250 days since the flesh emerged from below, that Scorpion can retrieve one of the 3 samples necessary to unlock the secret to the flesh mass heart's destruction. After tending to a mild burn that Scorpion received while grabbing the sample, we analyze the sample itself. It's then that I realize there's only one other nerve bundle on the entire map that contains another sample. We only have access to 2 of the 3 samples required to destroy the flesh mass heart. The only way for more nerve bundles to grow is if temperatures are warm enough for the flesh mass heart itself to beat again, which would cause the entire map to become swarmed with flesh and start this entire horrible cycle all over again. So, I suppose the best choice and the only choice is to simply accept the flesh mass heart's presence and use it to our advantage. We were never going to stop this. Also, my game crashed shortly after this, so I decided to tunnel directly back to the monolith itself after loading back in. I didn't bother gathering the sample from the nerve bundle at all. But yeah, I guess don't stare at eldritch anomalies for too long lest they crash your game. Anyway, not so long after that, Scorpion's increasing exposure to the cold hell surface world drives him into a fit of insane ramblings. So, as Scorpion loses himself to his newfound episodes of madness and mania, Hallbot will begin gathering as much salvage and necronoid material as possible. It's relatively safe for the time being. The only concerns we can immediately spot are the 2 wild undead dragons that have wandered into our territory. One of them was once a pack animal, but we're just gonna leave both of them alone. The morning of day 4, year 7, a small group of flesh hulks charged the bunker, thus giving Printer and Hallbot a chance to recharge some of their batteries, and a chance for Scorpion to reclaim some of his lost sanity, one bullet at a time, I suppose. While this engagement happens, the first trade caravan in like 3 RimWorld years decides to show up. And I mean, I of course said, yeah, welcome in, but I didn't realize that a bunch of shamblers also wandered in ahead of time. Unfortunately, thanks to these shamblers alone, pretty much every single member of this one trade caravan is now infected with the Necroa virus. If you don't know how bad that is, because you don't know how I modded my shamblers or haven't watched the series up to this point, I don't know, start at the bunker episode. I mean, you know, just watch every video in order and you'll know how bad shamblers are. But to put it simply, no one here is worth saving. In the early morning hours of day 5, year 7, Scorpion, after clearing out the remaining shamblers, can finally get some rest, while Hallbot or Holler and our construction bot can once again get back to work doing what they can to secure the surface. In the meantime, we've been researching things like xenogenetics and gun turrets. Xenogenetics I intend on using on the vampire that we have locked away in our prison cell. More on that to come. But the gun turrets, well, I'm sure you can imagine what those will be good for. Hallbot will then focus on securing corpses, scavenging for perishables, and especially hauling back anything worthy of value. The rest of the non-perishable material and items will come last in our list of priorities. Meanwhile, Scorpion will continue attempting to recruit the vampire's thrall that we captured, the 70-plus-year-old man-hating ghoul named Hitomi. Don't let the ghoul's elderly age fool you, though. Her time spent as a thrall left her with the mental and physical prowess of a 30-year-old scorpion. I guess 38-year-old scorpion if you want to be specific. Hitomi's stats are solid, and even more surprisingly, despite her being a misandrist, kidnapped and imprisoned by a man who's harvested nearly 20 bags of her blood, Hitomi has begun to see Scorpion as more of a friend than a captor. She actually kind of respects him. Perhaps during their conversations, Scorpion told his tale to her, of Lake Mountain and of Maria. Or at least, that's the lie Scorpion and I tell ourselves. Perhaps Stockholm Syndrome is simply to blame. Regardless, it's been well over 200 days since Scorpion had someone to call a friend and an ally, but now that we're able to escape to the surface, a helping hand is what we need. Grandma Thrall over here could easily maintain the bunker, while Scorpion can put his shooting stats to use by exploring the world itself and hopefully finding a new place to call home. One closer towards the equator, the green belt. The only place capable of sustaining life on an otherwise frozen RimWorld. As for the vampire itself, you'll see in time what I plan on doing with her, the crime boss Teresa Matthews. In the meantime, though, a survivor has crash-landed onto the surface with what are pretty terrible stats, and she crash-landed right in the middle of our toxic waste pack pile, which has begun to just decimate the surface with pollution. Rather than saving her, though, I decided to use her a bit as an experiment, a sort of way to see how effective the toxicity buildup is from all the damn toxic waste packs. Don't question the morality of that too much. Scorpion is already making a gas mask for himself. Sometime later, Printer finishes construction on our latest prototype, a gene extractor. Next in the assembly is a prototype gene assembler and some prototype gene banks to go along with it. Holler will be tasked with fetching the necessary steel and components to continue construction of our gene lab, which will, soon enough, be the home of one vampire named Teresa Matthews. The gene extractor does as the name implies, extracts random genes from humans and xenohumans. These extracted gene frames are stored in our gene banks. Once we've extracted all the genes we want for ourselves, we could theoretically mix them all up in our gene assembler and create a new type of xenohuman for ourselves. I guess I should also mention our undead dragon, shortly after I nicknamed it to Commander, untamed itself, and yeah, it doesn't belong to anyone, it just lives in our basement, but thankfully it doesn't need to drink or eat anything, we just need to not piss it off. Right, so the reason we're making all of these major steps towards gene stealing is simply because, I don't know, being a vampire or some other xenohuman sounds badass. And I'll be real, Scorpion can steal the embrace from our sanguiphage right now if he wanted. But here's the catch with that. Teresa Matthews belongs to a specific bloodline or variant of the sanguiphage xenohuman class known as a bruxa. Bruxas specifically only exist for the carnal pleasure of whoever or whatever, I don't even know. But as a result, it makes them almost entirely helpless in terms of combat and violence. Scorpion, should he become a bruxa right now, would essentially turn into a Giga Chad housewife, which, in a playthrough like this, does nobody any favors at all. Anyway, With all that in mind then, a Scorpion, as you can see, has just taken Teresa and placed her into our gene extractor. Once enough time passes and the process is complete, one of her many genes will be extracted, put into a gene frame, and then placed into our gene bank. The gene that we retrieve from the gene extraction process is completely random, meaning we'll have to deal with extracting both the good and the bad genes of Teresa. Once Teresa's genes are extracted, we won't be able to extract from her again for a little over 20 days or so, lest she meet a final death should we choose to speed up the process and extract more than her body's capable of giving. 12 hours later, and Teresa's first wave of gene extraction therapy concludes. And now Scorpion is the proud owner of a gene frame containing the genetic code for Tinder Skin, which essentially gives anyone possessing the gene, like most sanguiphages, dry and highly flammable skin. Teresa's next therapy session will be in about 18 and a half days. On the evening of day 10, after she gets her blood harvested for like the 24th time, Scorpion successfully recruits Hitomi to the cause, and she joins our colony. Now that she's been recruited, I could grant her a nickname of her own. But, well, I'm not sure what to call her, so I'll ask you. What do you think I should call our vampire's thrall, who's, I think, Japanese, but her last name is Galvin? Hitomi Galvin, huh? Okay, anyway. Scorpion also, somehow, reached maximum social standing with Hitomi. She actually considers him an ally, while Scorpion sees her still as just another stranger. With this in mind, I decided to trust our elderly caretaker turned ghoul slaughterer with some firepower, including a certain Scar battle rifle that's been with us since like day 7 or something. A long time. Unlike Scorpion, Hitomi still demands a bit of luxury in her living quarters. So, as a gesture of good faith, she will also be given the only nice room within a couple 100 miles. Scorpion's room, I mean. This works for Scorpion anyways, whose inherent asceticism means he would much rather sleep with the bare necessities. The following day, Hitomi's increased social and intellectual stats are used to trade for as much cloth as necessary to build, you guessed it, another friggin' air balloon. The blizzard that rolled in about a week ago and annihilated all the necronoids also shredded our last air balloon to pieces. This new air balloon will be used to scout the green belt, the equator, a place with temperatures that could reach up to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, a warmth Scorpion and I could only dream of. A tundric oasis where the few remaining civilizations on the entire planet have drifted off to. A place Scorpion would very much like to see for himself. I can't even imagine what it's like to return to nature like this, to see a land untouched by anomalous flesh, or the frozen ravages of a dying sun, a place where temperatures are naturally, not artificially, within a cool 50 degrees Fahrenheit range. What it must be like for Scorpion to see wild flora and fauna once again, and to sit upon frozen, untamed grass. If only Maria could see this. This is only a brief stop, though. Once Scorpion gathers enough wood to keep the air balloon afloat, he takes to the sky and pushes further into the green belt. Meanwhile, Hitomi livens up the bunker by having some nice wooden floors installed into her bedroom. Technically, Scorpion is still the one controlling his mechanoids, even if from afar, which I find pretty interesting. It's like a sort of indirect one-way communication between Scorpion and Hitomi. She complains that her room is too ugly, and suddenly Printer comes to life fixing it up and making it look nice. Despite our best efforts in helping her, however, Hitomi still inevitably falls to the mental break that's just kind of customary to anyone who remains in the bunker. So while she's busy recovering from her food binge, Scorpion lands to his next site, which is some sort of tundric swamp, covered, unfortunately, in various raiders and scavengers. Nothing Scorpion shouldn't be able to handle, though. As Scorpion lands, the bunker itself is suddenly raided. Contact with Hitomi and the bunker was lost almost immediately after Scorpion's departure at the end of last episode. That was over 50 days ago. Scorpion's balloon went down shortly after the bunker went dark, thus leaving him stranded on the equator over 20 days' travel by foot away from the bunker. This trek back to the bunker was made only more difficult thanks to an especially brutal ongoing winter, one that made even the green belt itself disappear under a blanket of ice and snow. Now, after months of traversing across this frozen RimWorld, Scorpion is finally nearing the bunker. Before he makes his final stretch to the bunker, Scorpion finishes assembling a small, relatively fast dirt bike, with parts salvaged from various car and tank wrecks found along the freezing expanse. The bike won't be able to carry much, and it can hardly gain any traction on the ice, but it's better than nothing. whatever happened within the last 100 days, you can hardly tell this place was ever once our home. The entrance to the bunker has been substituted by a flesh mass heart. Whatever once lied beneath us, the bunker itself, no longer exists. Not all was lost, however. Two familiar faces are stuck within a nearby ruin. The first being Hitomi, who is no longer the human we last saw her as. She's a sanguiphage now, one shot to the point of lying in a state of torpor. The other familiar face, as you can see, is none other than our stallion Boa, who has seemingly survived off of a series of rations that have been left from some bygone massacre of before. Scorpion will do everything he can to secure the immediate area. Meanwhile, a surprising amount of trade caravans of all different kinds keep showing up on the territory itself. It's nice to see some semblance of life in this place, even if the bunker itself is just a scavenging grounds. Unfortunately, the freezing temperatures, hostile nodes of flesh, and hordes of shamblers, all of which are littered about the ruins of this place, it makes it hard for anybody to remain here for any meaningful amount of time. And the planet is in such a decrepit state that, I'll be real, most of these traders that we are able to speak to have little to nothing worthy of trade. Nothing that we want, at least. Or, well, nothing we can afford either. We really should get the hell out of here, but we're gonna have to make the most of our time here in these ruins. There's plenty of good loot and lots of food. There's all sorts of things that we can try to grab, so long as we can breach the flesh and hopefully not aggravate it in order to reach those things. Despite having only been here for about a day, Scorpion's mental state has already begun to rapidly deteriorate from, well, exposure to the elements, lack of good sleep, lack of recreation, lack of hope, lack of safety, lack of semblance, lack of direction, lack of a place to call home. The memories of the damned that haunt this poor man and keep him up at night. On the morning of day 2 of Scorpion's return home, we begin to scavenge the local ruins from, I don't know, seems all sorts of people have tried to occupy this place, though it seems all have, at some point, failed in their endeavors to secure this territory. Any loot that's too far from our makeshift homestead at the moment, Scorpion will use Boa to retrieve. Which is really cool, finally seeing him ride this damn horse. I just wish the circumstances were better. The other reason we're remaining here has mainly to do with the simple fact that Scorpion, dirt bike and horse included, won't be able to form a caravan capable of towing all of the loot we find alongside the highly crippled and torpid Hitomi herself, which leads us to refactoring these particular rooms of the ruin in hopes of making a garage workbench that allows us to jerry-rig something together that has 4 wheels instead of 2. Meanwhile, as expected, the flesh takes notice of our presence and eagerly grows in our wake. Pause. Garage workbenches do require a hefty amount of steel and components to build, and it even requires power, but the power shouldn't be an issue. As you can see, there's an entire vanometric power cell, or, well, the small variation of a vanometric power cell, sat between Scorpion and an entire wall of flesh. There's only a handful of vehicles we can realistically hope to assemble, but none of that matters until we can power the assembly itself. Even if we can't power the assembly itself, Scorpion will still scavenge for the parts needed to assemble the car ahead of time, all while peeling away small strips of flesh in hopes of reaching the power cell. But of course, the flesh always retaliates. Once the flesh beasts are dealt with, thankfully without any issue, Scorpion attempts to build a stone fireplace to cook some of his catches. But without any wood in sight, he'll just have to strip the carcasses bare and eat them as is. Boa can't survive off of raw meat, though the horse can survive on simple meals even if they're made from raw meat. I don't know how that works. Don't ask me how that works. We can't waste any time nor show any restraint here. The flesh will regrow. We have to continue boring to the power cell. Thankfully, the flesh backs down for long enough such that Scorpion retrieves, then installs the power cell. The power cell only produces 450 watts, meaning we'll have to divert power between the part assembler and the stove itself. So long as everything remains calm as it is now, we should be out of here in no time. Shortly after Hitomi is kidnapped, Scorpion falls into a mental breakdown during his attempts to heal Boa, who is going to bleed out in less than 5 hours. Boa bleeds out only mere moments after Scorpion regains his composure. Let it be known that none, not Scorpion, not Hitomi, not anybody of the past, none have demonstrated greater courage nor sacrifice. None have endured more suffering than Boa. None have remained trapped in that damn bunker longer than Boa. He who has been with us since the times before this planet collapsed into a mechanoid-induced frozen hell. Despite all of what Boa had to endure, his choice to jump in the way of the bullets certainly saved Hitomi's unlife. He died a hero, on his terms. A testament to all that Scorpion and I have failed in our attempts to carve out a home on this godless frontier. May you ride in Sovngarde, you bastard. As for us, well, our time here on the bunker has come to an immediate and permanent end. We'll take what little we can carry and set about wandering the frozen expanse, with no place to call home. Despite all that was lost, there is still hope. The approaching summer months are already bringing an end to this especially devastating winter. The green belt is already beginning to emerge from the ice along the equator, and with it, the discovery of a signal that could honestly change everything. Scorpion had little trouble during his tenure wandering the expanse, drifting from ruin to ruin. His parka was more than enough to brave the cold, and the vanometric power cell allowed Scorpion to manufacture something far more suitable to crossing the wastes and reaching the signal he detected. Even better, Scorpion didn't have to make this trip alone. This is a profaned undead human nicknamed Gasp. Scorpion found him beaten to near final death by a horde of shamblers about 4 days ago, while scavenging for fuel. We have to pull over every other day or so to feed the crippled undead. Zombies gotta eat after all. Gasp is a unique psi-casting variant of Profaned, who was in possession of a Profaned-themed psi-casting staff and Profaned psi-caster armor to match it. I decided to keep him as a sort of narrative-friendly excuse for us to perform and unlock research on the Profaned research tree itself. And I hate to say it, but having a necromancer, psycaster, whatever, locked in our RV is just cool. Also, welcome to the interior of Scorpion's latest innovation, a big friggin' camper van. It's just an RV. It can haul a shitload, travel a shit ton of distance, and it has interior cabin access, which you're seeing now. It has everything we need to take Scorpion to the source of the signal that he's been following, which is about a 5 days drive away. At last, Scorpion reaches the source of the signal, an ancient stockpile within the Scarlands. Scarlands are essentially the ruins of a past civilization that were wiped out by weapons of mass destruction. They're only so livable, but Scorpion has made more with less. I think we'll be just fine here. The stockpiles themselves will have to be hacked open, which is gonna take a couple days. Looks like we're gonna have to call the Scarlands home for the time being. After resting up, feeding himself and his prisoner, Scorpion will venture outside and begin clearing out the local ruin that we've parked alongside. One of the ruins has an ancient self-powered auto turret that I almost destroyed before realizing we're much better off using it to our advantage. The rest of Day Zero is spent gathering nearby steel and staging the blueprint to convert this ruin into a base. We'll deploy some steel spike traps and patch any holes in the walls with steel bars. Once all the preliminary defenses are put in place, Scorpion will catch a bullet or two while opening up the door for the security turret ahead of time. The goal here being to let any would-be enemies run through the turret and then our spike traps should they try to go after us. I'm leaving the doors open because, as I'm sure you're aware, most enemies or hostiles will be baited by the open doors. But, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how that pans out when everything goes inevitably wrong, right? Later on the evening of the first day within the Scarlands, Scorpion will initiate the first hacking attempt on one of the stockpile hatches, which gives us a good idea on how long the process will take. Danger finally approaches on the morning of the next day in the form of a couple of scary-ridden man-hunting rats, which are thankfully taken care of by the ancient auto turret that was already here. That last rat wasn't dangerous, it just looked tasty. Speaking of tasty, Scorpion will hunt down some of the local boomalopes from the comfort of his shelled-out camp. I'm sure Scorpion will appreciate having some fresh game for dinner, as opposed to the never-ending supply of mushrooms he's somehow survived off of. Same goes for Gasp. I'm sure the Profaned much prefer eating flesh over mushrooms. Not to stereotype the Profaned as flesh-eating zombies or anything. Funny enough, as Scorpion rests, I realize his RV interior is technically far too clean and luxurious for the waster. Given his inherent asceticism, Scorpion finds comfort in one of the shelled-out ruins itself upon an empty cot. There's something comforting about the desolation-induced quiet, separate from the humming of batteries and engines. Pretty much all the morning hours of the following day are spent hacking the stockpile entrance. After that, Scorpion will begin his next project, which involves refactoring the interior of the RV itself. The first step of this process involves dismantling our chem fuel refineries and garage workbenches, then replacing them with a temporary subcore encoder. We'll only need the encoder to produce 5 subcores for now. Once the subcores are made, we'll dismantle the encoder and replace it with a mechanoid gestator and 2 mechanoid rechargers. Our power cells can only realistically power one of the mechanoid chargers as well as the gestator without burgeoning our overall power supply, for now at least. After that, we'll begin gestating our first mechanoid and then get back to work focusing on the task at hand, the stockpile entrances. Unfortunately, Scorpion locks himself out of the terminal for the time being. It's just a common process of hacking. You'll occasionally get locked out of the terminal for several hours at a time. In this case, 16 hours, which gives us plenty of time to focus our efforts elsewhere. The rest of the day is spent establishing our home zone and setting up a basic nutrifungus farm, as well as attempting to hack open a separate stockpile hatch. By the time the formers are said and done, our first mechanoid's gestation process completes. Meet Green Thumb Generation 2. Long may he serve. We'll also have to deal with the toxic waste produced by GG2 and the rest of the mechanoids that we'll produce. But we'll circle back to that in a moment. Not so long after this, as I eye up some steel sat along the beach, Scorpion is sent a gift from the Western Republic. Looks like we're having deep-fried fish for breakfast. And also we got a hold of ourselves some really high-quality medkits, so that was nice of them. A while later, after finishing construction on a toxic waste pack generator, our next mechanoid, Printer Gen 2, finishes its gestation period and comes into this world glistening and I don't know what I'm trying. Okay, anyway. We'll have to construct a second waste pack generator in order to burn all the toxic waste packs we're going to accumulate from the mechanoids contained within our RV. We'll worry about that shortly. As Scorpion returns to hacking the stockpile, Green Thumb G2 can also make itself useful by tending to our frozen-over mushroom farm. We begin gestating the next mechanoid on the evening of our 7th day in the Scarlands. On the morning of the 8th day, then, we're sent a care package from the Western Republic in the form of a whole new set of synth-red clothes and packaged survival meals, which completely overhauls Scorpion's fit. Oh wait, I'm just now realizing this isn't synth-red, this is hyperweave. Scorpion got himself some new hyperweave drip. Anyway. On the evening of our 8th day within the Scarlands, as Printer clears out debris from the ruins, our next mechanoid completes its gestation. LiftBot G2, welcome to the Scarlands. We'll have to stay on top of all the toxic waste packs that will inevitably be accumulated from having an RV full of robots. It would only take a handful of days for the unmanaged waste to turn the interior of this RV into, Chernobyl. On the morning of day 9, Scorpion enjoys breakfast alongside his imprisoned, sapient, psi-casting zombie, Gasp. Scorpion, having regressed to some Joel Miller, Daryl Dixon archetype, has virtually zero opinion on Gasp himself. Despite regularly engaging in conversation, it seems all of this is just a tactic for Scorpion to continue extracting information from Gasp. Specifically, information on the Profaned, the species of Gasp himself. From a narrative perspective, I mean, just imagine your favorite, zombie apocalypse protagonist encountering a zombie that could talk and doesn't infect. You're damn right we're keeping it in a cage. On the topic of the Profaned Gasp himself, despite being inherently hostile, the zombie still holds Scorpion in high regard, since Scorpion technically saved the zombie's unlife. Couple that with Scorpion's overall approachable nature, and it seems the only thing Gasp is complaining about is not having a big enough cell. Profaned are conditionally immortal. It seems Gasp is perfectly fine with outliving Scorpion if that's what it'll take before he can escape. Right, with all that out of the way, you might have noticed Scorpion having completed the construction of the second wastepack generator, as well as kicking off the gestation of our next mechanoid. Thanks to the presence of these mechanoids, which can do just about anything Scorpion can do, and working together, Scorpion himself can divert his focus solely on hacking open the stockpile itself. The next mechanoid, our G2 Cleansweeper, is hatched from gestation on the evening of day 10. Leaving only one more mechanoid to gestate before our mech army can be considered complete, for now at least. On the topic of mechs, in the early hours of day 11, LiftBot and Printer work together deploying a rudimentary defense system using our power cells and turrets that we've had stowed away in the RV. It turns out one power cell was more than enough to power both turrets, so I decided to use the other one to power a heater within the ruin containing our mushroom farm. That should help with the freezing temperatures. Meanwhile, on the morning of our 11th day here in the Scarlands, Scorpion finally hacks open one of the ancient stockpile entrances and descends below. My mind can't help but drift back to the bunker all over again. This place seems more than worthy of securing and calling home, but calling this stockpile home isn't exactly the goal here. We're looking for the source of the signal we've been tracking this entire time. After hacking a nearby terminal, which unlocks some distant unseen door, Scorpion hacks open one of the many mag-locked doors itself. We find the very blast door Scorpion hacked open just a moment later. One of the rooms contains an insect hive, so Scorpion will fall back and recuperate for now. Scorpion doesn't return to the stockpile until early next morning, shortly after midnight, while the hive is asleep. One of the rooms we open, the one that happens to be the most important room in the facility, contains a hunter trap that immediately activates and begins closing in on Scorpion, who is now running like hell back outside the bunker. Thankfully, Scorpion is able to make it out unharmed. Even better, the hunter drone changes target and closes in on the insectoids themselves. The subsequent explosion nearly kills off the bugs present. We'll circle back to them in a moment. For now, it seems our next and final mechanoid, Ankle-Biter Gen 2, has finished gestating. After nearly 2 days worth of bleeding out, the bugs go postal and begin tearing down the doors and walls of the stockpile. I would have left them down there to bleed had it not been for their decision to begin attacking one of the rooms with the contents that we absolutely need to preserve. Now that the stockpile has been secured, it's time for Scorpion to grab the contents that I've been elusive about. Time for me to reveal my hand. This room contains a grav core, alongside rows and rows of grav light panels. Both the panels and grav core are used in a variety of grav lift related tech, which is something Scorpion has never encountered before. If we play our cards right, Scorpion can use this grav lift technology to assemble an orbital platform that would allow us to leave the surface of the planet entirely. All we need now is a grav engine, which arrives shortly after Scorpion removes the grav core from the stockpile itself, specifically in the form of a ship crash. A quick look at the wreckage reveals the grav engine assumedly connected to the grav core that we recovered, which sustains only mild damage from the crash. Thankfully, amazingly, rainfall happens only moments later, ultimately saving the grav engine from any lasting damage. We'll have Scorpion douse the fires and patch the hole in our roof caused from the wreckage, while LiftBot G2 begins gathering everything from the wreck. Not so long after that, Scorpion reclaims the grav engine itself. Now that the grav core is secured, we can focus on scrounging some free batteries left behind from the crash. With the grav engine secured and analyzed, I suppose we can divert our focus from researching the profaned and instead research grav engine technology itself. It's already giving Scorpion plenty to think about. Should we get off the world ASAP? Or take our time and fit the RV onto it? Should we recruit Gasp and unlock the secrets of undeath? How should we even design the ship? And I guess, the greatest question of all, what are we going to find if we get off world?